when we first got married, I think it was about 2 years after we got married, I built our first house. It was a rambler, and I did everything. Laid the blocks, and but I had a electrician come and do the electrical work, and heating and air conditioning man do the furnace.
Debbie was a really difficult birth for me. She weighed 9 pounds 10 ounces, and she was a posterior baby. And in those days, they didn't do epidurals and they didn't do cesareans, and so we just suffered it through. And I was completely gone. I was not awake when Debbie was born. And I remember learning afterwards that my dad paced the floor, and he was about ready to tear out Dr. Harold Merkley's hair because he didn't think he was servicing me that well. And so everyone was worried about me, unbeknownst to me at the time. And Howard was really stressed out, and I remember them telling me afterwards that he finally went down to the doctor's lounge and says, "You got to do something. She's not doing well." And they came up, and they had lost the heartbeat of Debbie, and I was going downhill. And so they rushed me in, and they took Debbie by forceps. And the next morning when they brought me out of the recovery room and into my room, they brought Debbie into me. And I looked at her and I said, "This isn't my baby." And I have felt so bad ever since, because I just looked at her. I never expected to see a redhead. And I just knew there was no red hair in our family. And where did this bright red hair come from? And so they went back to the nursery, and they came back and they said, "Yes, Mrs. Paul, this is your baby." They did that twice, and finally Dr. Merkley came in with him, and he said, "This is the baby I delivered from you last night." And so from that point on, we were bonded, because she has been a remarkable daughter, and I have loved her, and I've always regretted that, but it was just the shock of the red hair, and I didn't.
Memories of my parents, of my dad. I remember growing up listening to him sing his crazy songs. We learned all the beer songs. We learned that David was a shepherd boy, an ornery little cuss, Jimmy cracked corn, and all those. And I remember him singing those and just laughing, and he'd laugh, and then we'd laugh again. I remember one particular time we were living on our house on 14th East, and Dad went out to buy us ice cream. The ice cream man came down the street with his truck, and the music was playing, and we were so excited. Kathy and I ran out, and he bought us, picked out an ice cream thing, he bought it for us, and we came back in, and Mom said, "What did you do that for? It's Sunday." And Dad had totally forgotten it was the Sabbath, and he says, "Oh dear." He says he just felt really bad, so he says, "Okay, let's put the ice cream in the freezer and we'll eat it tomorrow." And I remember learning the importance of keeping the Sabbath day holy from that experience when I was very young. And though my dad had done it on accident, it has made a great impression on me because we learned that the Sabbath day was a holy day.
I was the second child born to my parents. I have an older sister and 3 younger brothers. I was kind of squeezed in between my sister and my brother Steve. And I remember being very, very attached to my mother. She was my best friend growing up. I remember that I would cry when she would leave me, and I would get very, very homesick, and I would have tears in my eyes all the time that she would talk about that I guess kind of would break her heart because I would never say anything, but I would miss her deeply when she left. I remember going to school, and I would write her a note because I would miss her, and remember feeling very embarrassed because my friends might see me, and it wasn't a really cool thing to miss your mom at school, but I would write her a note and tell her how much I loved her, and would bring it home to her that night. I remember I would go off to school many mornings with a Kleenex in my hand that she had given me, and would keep it all day and bring it back to her with my note. I'm sure if she had kept all the notes that I have written her over the years, that she would have a file cabinet full.
Growing up, Mom taught us a lot of good things. I remember, well, she's the reason I know I cook and sew. She paid for lessons for me to learn how to sew, and would teach me, was very patient in teaching me how to put in zippers and cut things out and work that. Today, in my married life, I have in the past sewn for her as she has knitted or crocheted something for me, and that's been kind of fun. She taught me how to cook. I was very patient in teaching me those skills, and I'm grateful for that because I can cook. I know how to do that, and I'm very adept in the kitchen and can do those things, and I attribute that to my mother. She can do anything. At Christmas time, I remember she would cook, just go crazy cooking. We'd always have such a feast. She was a very good candy maker. I remember sitting at the counter and chopping nuts and stirring fudge, help watch unwrapping caramel and divinity and all those things, and just being fascinated with it. Though I'm not a candy maker, I can probably pull it off if I had to, but she was by far really the best. Christmas time, on Christmas Eve, we would have a big spread. There would be plenty to eat. There would be ham and jello salads and vegetables, and of course the candy and different treats that would take us through the holidays and into the new year. And I remember thinking, going through sugar withdrawal when that candy and all those goodies were gone in January was never a fun month because we had to go back to eating normal food again.
She tried to teach me to be very domestic. I was kind of a tomboy, and she tried her best to teach me to be a girl. She tried to put me in bows, and I didn't like those. I remember one day when I was in elementary school, she decided that she would teach me to knit. And I was pretty good at knitting, and I remember in primary, the last year of our primary, which would have been when I was 11 years old, we had to knit some slippers. And I was so far advanced that I actually was able to knit a sweater and had enjoyed knitting and remember my mom teaching me how to do that. But I gave it up for some golf clubs and a mitten ball and sort of went the other way. And my sister carried on the domestic part of that and loves to go to boutiques with my mother where I now say, no thanks.
Mom taught me how to knit, and she taught me how to crochet. In primary, it was important that the girls learn how to do that. I remember when I first started to knit that we didn't have needles, so I would knit using 2 pencils, sharp pencils, and would take my knitting to school, and the other girls did. But unlike the other girls, I had a mom who had taught me. And when the other girls were making slippers or doing simple things in primary to pass off different things, I made a sweater. Because I'd already made the slippers and done the other things. And so Mom had a very simple pattern. I remember it was a baby blue color, and that I made the sweater. It was sleeveless and had a little opening in the back with a button, and I wore that for quite a while. It was my favorite sweater. Mom, as I've grown and married life, she has continued to make sweaters for me, and that has been a lot of fun.